So take us through the process arc.
Yeah, why don't flip to the next slide, because I think it's really cool. And so this one you'll be able to see this a little bit more on the deck. What I really love about this slide is it shows the arc that we took a look at a few slides backwards, or broke up the 6 stages into 4 modules. And sort of the length of the line, though, on these is sort of closely related to the amount of time and energy that's required for that stage. So you can see in the middle, this like posting and sourcing, that takes a lot of work when you are trying to reimagine a different way of hiring and search. That probably takes at least a quarter of all of the time that you spend is really trying to connect with those networks, connect with the candidates. And then, so you see then going to reference checks, offer, onboarding. Well, onboarding pivots into something else, but sort of reference checks takes less time than the sort of things in the middle. So this just sketches out in a different way our proposed arc for it. And as we think about in the next slide, the resource requirements, where we as an organization need to be ready for this different way of approaching search. Some of our colleagues at the organization Generator in Toronto, we were talking with them about their recent reimagining of CEO search. And they said they were getting into it and realized, and sort of in hindsight, just how much extra work it was for the team. Even though it was really great, they really, like, the process that they pulled together was a really thorough, well thought out in a, sort of this different way, but they kind of didn't know how much work it was going to be until they got into the process. And so thinking about each of these stages, and in order to do a highly structured interview process where everyone moves through the process in exactly the same way, is asked the same questions by the same people in the same order, so we can compare apples to apples and not apples to trucks. So that there's not this, as Katrina was saying, this bias that comes in where someone's like, oh, I read that book. And then you get on this conversation about reading that book and you're like, that has no bearing in their ability to like be a director of finance. So in order to structure that, we need to take a look at the internal capacity of the organization. And I've never met an organization that says, I've got enough resources, I have enough time, I have enough money, I have enough people. So it's really balancing, like what can we do right now? What maybe experiments we can try on the way to building a more holistic process. So I think that's really balancing, like what's it take to create the content, especially if you will create videos or a podcast episode or something that brings in different voices. What's it going to take to map the network? Then to reach out to the network, and then how much time is it going to take for the interviews? That's kind of a known for most of us when we're doing the process. We know like X number of hours, X number of people times X number of interviews. But what's the debrief look like? How do we thoroughly debrief in a way that we can center the values during those conversations, and it's not a quick plus or minus on that candidate, move on to the next thing? And then what are the expenses? Again, the sort of quote unquote hard and soft expenses. Hard expenses being, if you're going to post here, it's going to cost you $250 for 3 weeks. Soft expenses are, if this person's involved, it means they're not going to be working on something else. And so we're trading their time and energy for this thing. So like what's really at play here? So we'll talk about KSAs, knowledge, skills, and abilities a lot. It'll keep coming up as a way to really get underneath the surface of what someone needs to be able to do in the role to be successful. And in a way of not, this isn't length of time, length of tenure, that classic, like what's the difference between a director and a senior director if it's not length of tenure? Like what are the knowledge, skills, abilities, behaviors that this person needs to have to be successful in the role? And this, as you're, for the weekly assignment, looking at job postings, like, is like 8 years of experience really necessary to be successful in this admin assistant role? Or like, do you really need to have that thing? Or can you reframe it really centering the knowledge, skills, and abilities in a way that people who might not have had the experience the way you described it actually have those things. And so taking a look at the knowledge, which is here defined as the body of information that a candidate needs to have that can be applied in helping them do the job. Then the skills, which are the quantifiable, measurable, and measurable is sort of handling and manipulating things, data, people, either verbally, manually, mentally to accomplish an objective. And then the abilities, the capacity to express a skill. And this starts to get like, is it a skill? Is it an ability? Is it knowledge? It's kind of muddy. So rather than like getting, for me, it's less about getting really firm. Is like is this a knowledge, skill, or ability? It's like just using that frame helps us think through what this thing is. I think enough to start to maybe articulate it in a way that is more inclusive. And so we include a couple of different, I think this is probably the thing where we can sort of jog through here. So knowledge of federal, state, and local employment law, or knowledge of a language that's not commonly spoken in a geographic area. This could also be, different computer programming languages. So does someone need to have that knowledge of sort of Ruby on Rails before they apply for a senior Ruby on Rails developer? Probably. And so in ways like, is this actually required of them coming into the role, or might they learn it on the role? Skills, bicycle repair, that's a skill. As a cyclist, I'm not very good at it. So I'm glad that people have this skill besides me. Facilitating public speaking, those are skills. And again, like, do you need to have that skill when you're coming into the role as a bicycle mechanic, or can you learn it on the role? Or do you need to know enough, but then the rest of it will, like, you need to know what a donor database is, but you might not necessarily need to know this donor database, which probably, as I say, no, probably is a knowledge. But anyhow, and then we have abilities. So abilities gets us like the ability to plan and organize, the ability to evaluate and analyze, the ability to communicate efficiently in writing, the ability to mentor and coach. And again, this question we want to keep coming back to, do you need to have that before you get into the role, or can you develop that in the role, or sort of quote unquote on the job in the role? And so coming back to and sort of unpacking this for every job posting you'll be looking at, is an interesting, like, would I say this is a knowledge, a skill, or ability? Or can I reframe this in a way that's not must have 3 years of experience doing program management for a nonprofit to like how
must have master's degree, must have,
or customer service experience, which is kind of what some program associate I'm thinking of, like it's more customer service in alignment. I see moving the word ability, even reframing, which will get us to our fun weekly challenge here. So Katrina, want to unveil what we have in store for everyone between now and next Wednesday?
Yeah, I do. And I just want to add there that's when we come back to, debriefing those interviews that we have, that's where you start to see these dials, right? And so when you think about, does this person have this knowledge, to what degree? Okay. And then in this requirement, or in this, skill set, to what degree are they already proficient, or do they need and so then you start to look at the unique candidates to the role, and then the organization is actually allowed to say, like, where do we have capacity to train and uplift, and where do we have capacity to provide learning experiences, or how do we pair coaching in this situation? And so that you actually have a relationship that acknowledges those unique gifts that the candidates are bringing, and also the recognition that the organization has a responsibility to that person as well. And so that's part of that onboarding piece, but also part of that sort of interview and assessment kind of piece.